we are back with our second conversation for this morning. Joining us in studio to talk all about e-governance and the Digitalization Unit, we have Alexia Peralta, who is the Director of E-Governance and the Digitalization Unit, and Jeanelle Mencias, who is the Senior Informational Officer at the Government Press Office. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good. Glad to be here.
All right. So, e-governance and the Digitalization Unit. It rolls right off the tongue.
Yeah, right.
Speak to us about this unit and the importance.
Well, really and truly, it was under the administration, I think almost 2 years now, that they saw really the importance of e-governance, which is in reality leveraging technology that already exists to become more efficient, more effective, and to become more open and inclusive as a government. So it's really a governance mechanism that's utilized to modernize your own country, and in so doing helping to support the growth of it. So because of its importance, they established the first Ministry of E-Governance, and with that, our unit, which is the executing arm, we're responsible to execute all the projects under the National Digital Agenda, which is the umbrella framework for the country for the next 4 years, in how we plan to leverage technology, how we plan to utilize technology, to achieve various principles of e-governance.
What does the digital agenda include? For the lay person, for the average person who would want to understand, okay, what does this all encompass? What are we looking at?
Well, first of all, our main goal is to build that trust back again in government, to build trust in the services, to build the reliability and the safety of the services. So what the citizens can expect, of course, is more services going online, being able to access these services from home, but also being able to engage with the government through technology. So we also talk a lot about open government. And you can also expect to be able to tap into the ICT sector. So we'll be executing very soon digital skills courses, which we've done for the public service, but also for the citizens, so that you now can also tap into the ICT sector.
Okay.
Let's talk to
Jeanelle,
my good friend from the press office. So you've been a part of this initial cohort, if I could describe it as such. What were some of the takeaways that you would now be able to implement in your professional life?
Well, I think the first one I have to mention is just recognizing the difference between digitization and digitalization. And I think I remember after they launched the agenda, I went over to Alexia and I'm like, what's the difference? And so, you know, it's knowing you move from digitization is moving from analog to a digital form, and then digitalization is now bringing governance and transactions to be used and accessible by the public, right? The course, though, like really highlighted that it's not as simple as we think when it comes to digitalization. On the surface, you think, okay, you put in some computers, add some software, and we're good to go. But it's so much more than that, you know. It's making sure that you have buy-in from the people who will use it, those who are service providers, and those who will benefit from the services. It's also making sure that people have the necessary skill set to be able to utilize these programs or applications that you'll be implementing. And it's also about recognizing that there are challenges moving into this, because you have to know, is the staff prepared to take on this challenge? So I think it really highlighted what you need, having an overall view of what is in place and how we need to move forward from where we are now. And if I could just share, one of the things we did was we were tasked with identifying a department or ministry in government and doing a full assessment We started with SWOT analysis, looking at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And then we moved on to digital skills assessment. What is it looking like in terms of leadership and governance? What's the current state of things? How are we bridging the gap in terms of the digital skills? Then, and I'll just highlight that my group chose the vital statistics unit, and you know that's a sore thumb for government, right?
Yeah.
And so that was a good one to use.
Yeah.
And so we looked at fishbone analysis and looking at, okay, what's the biggest issue in that ministry? So we identified service delivery. So what are the things that are causing poor service delivery, right? And then we moved on and we did what's called a digital maturity or digital readiness analysis, which looks at how prepared is your department, and it assesses based on a list of questions under very specific categories. And the highest you can score is a 3. And for instance, in our case, the highest we scored is a 1.3, right? So it shows that there's still a long way to go and much to be desired. And then finally, we provided recommendations as to how this particular ministry can improve.
It's interesting that you would choose the vital statistics unit as your example or your study, so to speak, because from the outside looking in, where service delivery is concerned, a lot of people walk away feeling shortchanged, in a manner of speaking. The length of time that they'd have to wait to get access, the turnaround time for them to get satisfaction, so to speak. They walk away thinking, wow, I come all the way from down south, for instance, and I have to stand in line, and I have to wait several days for an outcome, and in some cases I have to return, when the argument could be, well, this could have been done remotely. This process could have been automated in such a way where I could simply log on, punch in the information, verify it, and then the person on the back end would be able to process it, and it's made a bit easier, what we would describe as ease of access or ease of doing business.
But then just piggyback on that note, right? On the other hand, you have those that don't have access to any kind of digital device or electricity for that matter. So how are we trying to help those?
Well, actually, we've just signed an implementation agreement with the Taiwan Embassy in implementing a digital inclusion program, but likewise, we're also executing one with the UNDP. And the idea is exactly that. How do we not further widen the digital divide that already exists? So as part of those programs, we'll be implementing what you would traditionally call telecenters, which are really access service hubs that you'll place it in various locations across the country that will now give not just the technology, but also the accessibility to even skills. Because when you talk about inclusion, there's one thing to give access to the device, but if they don't know to utilize the device, they're not comfortable with it, then we're not really solving the problem. So we're also going to be doing digital literacy courses for the elderly. We're going to be doing different skills programs for youth so that they can begin to utilize all the available resources that exist today. So, that's how we're also trying to ensure that while we're going online, we're also mitigating these additional risks and these additional challenges that, going online will automatically bring.
Right. Jeanelle, how does it feel to be the first digital leader?
To be a part of the first cohort, I think it helps us to have to understand our role in this, because we're supposed to be advocates for this now within our departments and ministries, and I think what it did was gave us a real in-depth look as to what's happening, because doing the assessments, you're looking from the point of view of a customer, what's not working. And I know Isane as well, why the VSU, but because you're seeing from the outside, I went and I looked on Facebook for our project to see, what were the comments. If there was anything positive, that would have been great, but absolutely nothing. And so it comes back to the whole idea of inclusivity, accessibility, and having us understand as service providers that we want to make our services inclusive and accessible, and so it's buy-in from our end too. We can't, you can advertise these services, but if the people actually providing the service aren't skilled or are still unsure of how it works, then you're still failing, right? And as Alexia said, it's also making sure that the customers are also that they're also educated, that there's awareness from that end. You have all these digital applications, for instance, eCash. I love eCash, right? Because it's convenient. But does everyone have access to it, and is everyone able to use it the way I'm utilizing it? So just looking at all these things.
Ultimately, that's what it boils down to, though. I look at it as sort of a two-way street, a degree of mutuality, where on one end you're making the services available, but on the other end the user has to be educated enough to be able to use it, plus be able to have access to it, right? Like you said, if you use eCash or any form of digital currency, if you use digital wallet or whatever it may be, it is there and it is easy once you've understood the concept and how to use it. But for people who perhaps have a phone, if you're using your device, if you have a phone, you don't know how to access the app, you don't know how to begin the basics of using the app, then you're still at square one. Right? Weigh in on that a bit for us, Alexia.
No, I think definitely, as I was hearing Jeanelle speak, as definitely she's one of my digital ambassadors. No, but what you guys have highlighted is really a culture shift that we're trying to create. And as we know, it takes time to change culture. Likewise with the public service, when we're talking about transformation, you're talking about people first. How do we help people to transition to a new reality? I mean, if you only think about the current situation with COVID, it took us a time to also adapt. Likewise with the digital revolution. So we saw it necessary to support the public service, because if government will transform itself, it needs to support its people. And its people is the public service. And how do we get the public service to begin to adapt to a new way of doing things? And the only way that's possible is if we give them the tools, we give them the knowledge, we make them understand and give them the experience. So we really empower them, and that was the entire idea of this course when we partnered with the UNDP. How do we design a course that allows the public officers to become empowered and not be afraid, not be concerned that we're taking them digital, but they have so many questions. So I think it really did help from what she's saying.
I would presume, however, that all of government is so robust. It's such a huge organization with many moving parts at various levels, right? You have some people who may be fundamental in their mindset that this is the traditional way of doing things, this is what I know, this is what I've perfected in all of my years in the government service, this is what I'll do. You have other people who are open to new ideas and implementing new ideas. So within itself, there's that gap. There's that gap between people who are technology savvy versus people who are pen and paper. Now, when you look at all of that, how do you bring people together in that regard to be able to be on one page to provide the service to the public?
Well, the first step is really to understand what their needs are, and that's what we've done. Aside from the course, we've also done a gap assessment, an ICT gap assessment across government to understand, as you said, where are we? Where are we across ministries, across units? Where are we within ministries itself? How are we compared to each other? Where are the gaps? But one of the things we asked them in the whole survey and study we did was, what needs do you see you need? What additional support and capacity do you need to be able to do the work that you're now expected to do? And I think that's something that's different when you begin to ask people, what do you think you need? Then the conversation changes, and I think they become more open to wanting to engage, because now it's more a dialogue, it's more a collaboration. So that's the approach we've taken. And it was surprising for us to see that many of them did highlight, that they wanted to have more capacity building in digital transformation. They wanted to have capacity building in information security. In how do they keep this vital data that they have within their ministry safe? So I think the awareness is there, but maybe the tools have not been given to them. So that's what we're now trying to work on, and trying to build that partnership.
There is an ongoing conversation about us moving digitally might create a lack of jobs now, right? That the computer will take over. It is a conversation,
it's a
right?
Fear, yes.
It is a fear. So can you counteract that myth? Can you tell them why that's not going to be possible, or why it's actually going to help increase the job stability?
Right, and that's actually a great point. When you think about digital transformation, right, we always think we're going to put in a system and
people are going to lose their jobs.
Right, everybody's going to disappear.
Right.
But in reality, because you have a system now, that system also needs to be maintained. And there also needs to be that back-end process and utilization of the information. So it's not like you're completely removing people, but in fact, you're maybe adding additional value to the roles that they play today. Because we are becoming more specialized. You're becoming more technical within a specific field, because that's what's now required from you. For example, I think we will need more information security experts. So it's opening up a new field of careers within the public service instead of actually removing and diluting. So I think it's, again, the understanding of what really happens in this transformation process, I think, is what leads to those types of fears, because we believe it's removing of people. But I think Jeanelle can highlight from the course, one of the big aspects that was highlighted was that you're going to utilize more people, but in specific areas.
So jumping on what Alexia is saying, I think we'll move into the less traditional jobs and moving into fields where you're using these skills like information security, which is one of the things we definitely covered a lot of. You need people to train people in digital skills too. Like Isani highlighted, we're not all there yet. And so you do need people who have the capacity to change mindsets and change the culture within government. And so I don't think it's something we should fear, but to see how we can integrate it into the work we already do. I mean, with our work, especially with COVID, suddenly at the press office, we went from being on site with everybody for everything to suddenly transitioning to doing live streaming. And, as simple as that seems, I know a lot of people think it's, you just pick up a phone and start video and live stream, it's good to go. But I mean, you all know it's so much more complex, and having eyes everywhere. So I don't think at any point you're eliminating people, but you're finding new roles for everybody in that process.
That's true. Speak to us more about the course, and are you going to be offering this by different cohorts? Who can take the course?
So the course was actually a regional course that was launched by the UNDP and ITU, which is the International Telecommunication Union. And what we did was we really tailored it for the public service context, and we added live sessions. So the course is executed within 4 weeks, and every week the participants need to engage together to try to do these various assessments, because at the end of the course, the objective is for them to prepare an entire assessment of a ministry or unit and then provide recommendations. And in so doing, we're also trying to accelerate the process within all of these ministries, because like you said, public service is large. How do we move them together? is why we saw the need to begin to create that wave of digital leaders. Cohort 1 began last month in
early June,
and it took us 4 weeks. The next cohort begins in August, and then we'll have a third cohort in October. And because of the high demand, we're actually going to do now a fourth cohort in January. And every cohort is 40 participants.
Wow.
Initially, it was for senior policy officers within ministries, but because of the high demand, we're actually opening it up to anybody in public service who wants to actually take on this course. And we're also considering tailoring the course once more for the general public, because we've been getting a lot of request and demand of the general public in they wanting to do the course, which for us is exciting because we didn't expect that. So we might be launching a new one, and we're also designing an advanced course for the cohorts, because what they learned right now is just the basics, the fundamental, but how do we continue to help them in building their career, in becoming now digital planners and digital leaders. So again, helping them to fulfill a new role that now is necessary for this entire transformation.
That was going to be my next question, how basic or advanced the course was, especially if you're planning to give it to the general public, right? So like, how are you going to let my grandma learn how to do a QR code? It's a legitimate question, right? She would need to go to Social Security. She's somebody that needs to go to lands, vital stats, Ministry of Immigration. So how do you plan to navigate a course tailored to somebody like her?
Yeah, and that's we're discussing actually with different community NGOs. For example, Humana is one. And how do we also tailor these courses and digital literacy courses based on the community? Because each community has different needs, and they're at various levels as well. So definitely the idea under the digital inclusion program is to design tailored specific projects and courses depending on the communities that we're going to execute it. But with that, we need to do partnerships with the NGOs who are integral into the entire culture of that community. I mean, we are not always in the field, so we might not understand best. So the idea is to really be able to capture their need, to do surveys, interviews, etc., to try to get involved and really understand, and then design the course based on that.
Perfect. Yeah, I like that. Any other final thoughts for our viewers before we wrap up?
Well, as always, when I'm here, I always ask the viewers to please, continue engaging with us, continue giving us the ideas, because while we're here as experts, we don't always have all the solutions, and us being able to understand the need of the users, which is the general public, is really helpful for us in moving forward. So always asking for that engagement, that collaboration with us, and you can expect to see us more as we continue to launch different projects. One of the telecenters actually phases will be launching in September, and also the courses.
I think that we should be open to improving and developing our digital skills. I mean, the world is now in such a way that if you're not going digital, you're going to be left behind. And just looking at the whole idea of inclusiveness, I look at my grandparents, and a couple years ago, they didn't know how to use WhatsApp. And now if I know to them on WhatsApp, or my grandfather, he always knows about what's happening in the news. And when I say him, how you know that, Gramps? I see it on the internet. And so it speaks to that, bringing not just the young people, but we still have our teenagers who need to catch up with us, right? And not leaving them behind, because even if they're not in the same sphere we are, the processes that they still need to use, like you highlighted, are moving into these digital, are transforming digitally, and so they too need to catch up. So I think it's just about being open to learning, so that you can also maximize and capitalize on these opportunities that exist.
If I can just add,
of course,
one last element. As Jeanelle was speaking, it kind of reminded me of the fact that we also took to the House last 2 weeks, I would say, I believe, a digital government bill. And the fundamental aspect of that bill is really to try to support the government to be able to bring everybody up to a specific standard. So while the course provides that knowledge, that experience, etc., we're trying to ensure that we're also setting the framework in guiding how do we all collectively now take this approach. Because as you highlighted earlier, we're all different. We're all moving at a different level. So how do we, just like, trying to level the playing field in the private sector, likewise, how do we do so in the public service? So that bill also adds the framework to support the execution of the courses and trying to create these various standards within ministries so that when you engage with government, you're engaging with government. You're not engaging with separate units, but you feel the one quality, one standard across.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much, ladies, for dropping by and talking to us. We look forward to August, September, October, January.
Yes.
And with that, we're going to take our final break, and we'll be back for a wrap-up. So stay tuned.